Hey guys, King of Charmanders here, and today I bring to you the best Deviljho weapons guide. The Season 7 Riftborne meta. As this video analyzes the weapons of the new featured Riftborne monster, Deviljho. Yay! Either the pickle's about to take a lot of your potions, or you're gonna be like me, where you're gonna poison it to death and break the crap out of its face so that you can get all of its saliva. Which is disgusting, but also very, yes, you need those rarity 6s, as well as those Riftborne scales. As Deviljho weapons are powerful dragon weapons, and each weapon type has their own unique weapon skill. And this video is updated to include all current weapon types, except Insect Glaive because it's not out yet, sadly. That's actually what I plan to build, but Insect Glaive isn't coming out till 2026. So I gotta wait, let's see, 3 months and some change until it actually releases. Actually, I don't think it'll release until the March update in 2026, but we'll see. So yeah, we're waiting for the Insect Glaive, and we're gonna go over all current weapon types until that comes out as of right now. But first, let's go over the list of Deviljho weapons. Here's a note, these include the names when upgraded to grade 6. So you're gonna have the beginning name and then the name after they go to grade 6, because you know they're pretty cool. First off, we have the Sword and Shield, which starts off as the Fatal Joe, and goes and evolves into the Fatal Bite. Next, you have the Greatsword, which turns into Berserker Sword, and then upgrades into the Anguish. Followed by the Longsword, where it starts off as the Revel Cruelty, and upgrades into the Reaver Calamity. As well as a hammer, which starts as the Devil's Due, and then it ends up being the Devil's Crush. With the dual blades, you have Wrath and Rancor, and then they evolve into the Wrathful Predation. For the lance, you have the Grief Lance, and then it turns into the Fiendish Chower. The Gun Lance, which states itself as the Ravenous Gun Lance, and it becomes the Insatiable Gun Lance. For the Charge Blade, you have the Tyrant's Charge Blade, and then it turns into the Oppressor's Charge Blade. On to the Switch Axe, which starts off as the Tyrannos, and turns into the Terror Tyrannos. For the bow, you have the Insurgent's Bow, and it becomes the Villainous Brace. Into light bowgun, we have Devil's Grin, and then it gets crazy and turns into Devil's Madness. For the powerful heavy bowgun, you got the Gluttonous Cannon, and eventually it becomes the Dark Devourer. And last but not least, stats for now, we have the Hunting Horn, which starts out as the Devil's Maestro, and then becomes the Deep Pharaoh. However, wait there, we have a list of Deviljho's equipment skills as an additional list, and here's a note. These require the weapon to be upgraded to grade 8. You have the Sword and Shield, which gains the Skyward Striker at level 2. The Greatsword, which gains Focus level 1. The Longsword, which gains Quick Work level 1. The Hammer, which obtains Slugger level 1. The Dual Blades, which gets Burst level 2. The Lance, which gets Offensive Guard level 2. The Gun Lance, which provides Artillery level 1. And the Charge Blade, which gains Latent Power level 1. In addition, we have the Switch Axe, which gains Morph Boost level 1. The Bow, which obtains Peak Performance level 2. The Light Bowgun, which gets Rising Tide level 2. The Heavy Bowgun, which gets Defensive Loading level 1. And the last and latest weapon we had on to Monster Hunter now, the Hunting Horn, which gains Power Prolonger level 1. And what will it take for you to forge the Deviljho weapons? Well, here's the forge stats and costs. So Deviljho weapons start at grade 5, with their base raw attack being 368, and their base elemental attack being 292. Along with the base affinity being negative 30%. And as you max them out, the raw value will be slightly higher than the elemental value. And this brings us to the Deviljho max stats and requirements. So your max raw attack is 1579, and your max elemental attack is 1568, with your max affinity being negative 30%. And at max, you'll have access to the Deviljho weapon skill, and the raw is 11 points above the elemental, and the negative affinity stays the same. And it takes a lot of whooping materials, as you see here. Unfortunately, because Deviljho is in volatile territories, it's going to be immense pain for you to max them out, unless you take them out in outbreaks like, you know, the upcoming Exploration Bake outbreak for Riftborne Deviljho. This is why we're making this video in the first place, because, you know, they might happen again in the future, and we need to slay a lot of pickles. And now the part you probably all skipped to, here's the Deviljho melee damage comparison. Here's the data. Data is data. No matter how much you feel about it, data is absolute. And here we compare the max damage of Deviljho melee weapons versus the top dragon monster types as of Season 7. I know there's event weapons and other things out there, but we're gonna look at the top because the top is pretty much what everyone should be going after unless you can stock customize it or there's a discount. And for the data, Nier Gigante for melee is the strongest. Nier Gigante weapons also have Part Breaker 2, so its skill is useful and strong. However, this doesn't account for equipment skill as each Deviljho weapon has its own unique skill. So again, if I put every single positive weapon skill on this thing, it would take... this list would be a lot longer, so we might as well just do that for a different video, you know, like a builds video, instead of just cramming everything into one video, which is... it would take a lot. So yeah. In addition, the difference is also pretty marginal if you look at between the monster types. It's a 5 or 6% less, and that's not a lot at all. Between Deviljho, Nier Gigante, and Ebony Odo Garen, if you have the weapon types for it, that's the range. And like I said, it's hardly noticeable. So you'll probably see the difference if you input the damage data from taking into account the powerful weapon skills of each individual Joe weapon. But again, Nier Gigante also has Part Breaker Part 2, so that's pretty nuts. So it's just, yeah, it's like apples and oranges, but because it's very specific, we're just going to go over each and every one and how it benefits for each individual weapon skill rather than just throwing up everything at once. And this brings us to the Deviljho bow damage comparison. So here we compare the max damage of Deviljho bow weapons versus the top dragon monster types as of Season 7. And per the data, Deviljho is the strongest when we take peak performance into account without taking ammo typing into account. So yes, Deviljho will be the strongest overall just by base damage, just because you have peak performance too. However, if we factor in the fact that both Nier Gigante and Gold Rothian are super weapons because they have a charge 3 to damage for ammo types. For Nier Gigante, it is Pierce, and for Gold Rothian, it is Spread. So because of that, yes, if we're just looking at base stats, yeah, Deviljho would wreck just because of peak performance. But if you had taken the other thing into account, the Nier Gigante Gold Rothian weapons will just truck through Deviljho. And last but not least, we have the Deviljho bowgun damage comparison as we compare the max damage of Deviljho bowgun weapons versus the top dragon monster types as of Season 7. So for light bowguns, Deviljho would be stronger technically, however, Nier Gigante tops the list. The thing is, if we take into account Rising Tide +2, which Deviljho light bowgun does have, well, the problem is the hunt has to last long enough for it to activate and for the boost to go higher over time. Otherwise, you're probably going to notice the Nier Gigante light bowgun just breaking parts like no tomorrow. For heavy bowgun, Nier Gigante would also be the strongest. However, this is more solidified because the Joe heavy bowgun has a terrible weapon skill in defensive reloading. Because of that, Nier Gigante HBG would just go ham like it does. Not saying Deviljho HBG isn't bad in the power sense, it's just in the weapon skill sense, it's pretty bad. And since we're speaking of going ham, well, we have the Deviljho ranged weapon ammo comparison as we compare the ammo of the Deviljho ranged weapons versus the top dragon monster types as of Season 7. For a light bowgun, Joe has slicing and sticky ammo, allowing you to cut tails and stun monsters, which might actually be a better set versus Nier Gigante depending on what you're looking for. Again, Nier Gigante does have Part Breaker, so again, it just really depends on like what you want to get, as Dragon and Spread, along with sticky. And for heavy bowgun, Joe has Wyvern ammo, so it can deal heavy actually worm ammo, I think it's called. But it has to cycle through 3 ammo types unless you're using evading reload. So that's a lot of like bullets you have to check in the air before you actually get to worm dragon ammo. And Nier Gigante solves that issue by taking out the regular, the worm dragon ammo and just having Spread and sticky. So again, it's just really up to you. However, the one thing that we can say is that Gold and Nier Gigante dominate bows with their charge 3 to damage for mechanic. Unfortunately, Joe's is 2 charges to level 3, which actually isn't that great. To put it in perspective, it would take you 3 spread level 3s to fire off 2 super weapon shots, which is rapid level 3 at ammo level 3, well, not ammo, charge level 3 to damage 4. There you go. As you see, yes, they dominate. So there's no question with bow. For the other ones, you can kind of take a look at it and then decide for yourself which one would prefer for you. Because both are still really good, don't get me wrong. But there's some great news as Deviljho has discounted materials until October 13, 2025. Again, it's until October 13, 2025. So after this day, this is not going to apply. So upgrade them now. Hopefully they may bring this back in the future. So here's the difference. There is no requirement for weapon refining parts. And you also don't need gatherable materials like monster bones, sharp claws, and dragonfell berries. You will also not required to have Anjanath parts, which can be really annoying, especially when newer players like, do I have to hunt this other monster to build this? Yes, you must. And your Zany is lowered by half, so from 425,000 to 212,500. And in order to actually build this, since all these are out, the requirements to max your Deviljho weapons are only the Deviljho materials itself. Don't get me wrong, that's still a lot of materials, but taking out the rest of these, you do happen to save a lot of space and a whole lot of grief if you do decide to build Deviljho weapons within this window and then style customize them. And this brings us to the overall analysis we have for the Deviljho weapons. So depending on the weapon type, Deviljho weapons are totally worth building. Some of you are going to be like, do I build this one? Well, you better decide because we do have that discounted material period. So it's especially true when you should take a look at whether or not you want to build a Deviljho weapon. And the thing is, dragon is an expensive element to invest in as any other dragon elemental weapons are event-based. So Odobear and Garen, Ebony Odo-Garen, why the heck did I get that wrong? I don't know. Ebony Odo-Garen is a dragon type. But again, that thing doesn't come out much unless it's an event. In addition, for Nergigante, it's an Elder Dragon, okay? And for Deviljho, you have to do volatile territories. The easiest one are the event weapons like Halloween, etc. But still, it's still really expensive. Now, as of right now, you can only encounter Deviljho in volatile territories, huntathons, tracking, and paintballs, so they're very hard to build outside of events. They'll only spawn outside of this when the Riftborne Deviljho that is featured in Monster Outbreaks occurs, which is literally tomorrow for me, and some of you are probably already there to take out as many Deviljho as humanly possible. Overall, all Deviljho weapons are in fact worth taking a look at if you can't go after Ebony Odo-Garen or Nergigante. Or for the bow, you want Gold Rothian as well, because you only get dragon out of the bow. So yes, just decide really what you want, and then build out of this for the future. Hopefully this video helps you decide which Deviljho weapon to build. And I'm going to make a separate video for the Deviljho weapon tier list and style customization tier list. Because if I packed everything in this one video, it would be a lot. Same thing for builds. Going to pack in builds for each individual weapon type. Yes, each individual one later on. So we'll see the best of the best. I'm putting a lot of work towards that. With that being said, please do me a huge favor. Like, subscribe, and comment for the YouTube algorithm. May your Riftborne skills be plentiful from any Riftborne monster, especially the pickle, if you do decide to go after it during outbreaks, or if you're just taking in hats, etc. May you get the rare 6s you need very, very soon. Good luck on your grands, good luck on your outbreaks, and I will see y'all on the next video.